Hello everyone, my name is Luca Sarti and I am a PhD student at the University of Naples L'Orientale, where I am working on a research project focusing on Irish fairy tales. Inspired by the difficult moment we all are experiencing, the coronavirus outbreak and the consequent lockdown, today I would like to read and analyze with you a very famous Irish fairy tale called Fair, Brown and Trembling in order to reflect on the fact that home may sometimes be not a safe place. Before we get started, I would just like to thank to the BAIS for organizing this online month-long Irish Studies conference, for creating a space where we can share our works and opinions. In addition, I would like to clarify that I decided to fill the slides on my PowerPoint presentation more than expected in order to make them more usable for the hearing impaired. So, in this talk entitled Stay Home, Don't Go Out, Reading Fair, Brown and Trembling in the Time of COVID-19, after a brief introduction on domestic violence, we will read and analyze the first transcription of the fairy tale Fair, Brown and Trembling and its feminist adaptation called Sister Fair, in order to reflect on the fact that home not always is a safe place for women. Let's start from this question. Is home a safe place? As Dorothy Gale says in The Wizard of Oz, the screen adaptation of Baum's novel The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, there's no place like home, which means that home is the best place to stay. However, we know that home is not the best place for anyone to stay because it is the main place where domestic violence occurs. According to the definition offered on the UK government website, by domestic violence is meant any incident or pattern of incidents of controlling, coercive or threatening behavior, violence or abuse between those who are or have been intimate partners or family members regardless of gender or sexuality. This can encompass, but is not limited to, the following types of abuse: psychological, physical, sexual, financial, emotional. Although domestic violence concerns both men and women, children and adults, on this occasion I will take into consideration violence against women. As we can also read on this article published on The Time, the most dangerous place for women around the world may be at home. Indeed, according to the digest published by UNICEF Innocenti Research Center in June 2000, women are often in great danger in the place where they should be safest, within their families. For many, home is where they face a regime of terror and violence at the hands of somebody close to them, somebody they should be able to trust. Those victimized suffer physically and psychologically. They are unable to make their own decisions, voice their own opinions, or protect themselves for fear of further repercussions. As you can imagine, the historical moment that we all are experiencing becomes even more problematic for many women that are forced to stay home. At a time where we have all been asked to stay at home, says Colin Brennan on the Irish Mirror, we're very conscious that for victims of domestic abuse, home may not be a safe place. Sure enough, as Mark Townsend writes on The Guardian, shocking statistics are revealing that domestic violence is surging since the start of the coronavirus lockdown. Therefore, women are fearing the aggressor indoors and virus outside. According to Ruth Nederloft, although the study of domestic violence in literature is a recent issue, the subject of the treatment of domestic violence in literature is timeless in Western culture, and it is revealed perhaps more intensely and usefully through literature than through any other means of study. As for fairy tales in particular, as observed by Donald Haas, we know that they have always included violence in all of its forms. As a matter of fact, just like many women in both literature and real life, Also, the female protagonists of many fairy tales are victims of violence and, of course, domestic violence. For many of them, home is not a safe place. Just think of fairy tales such as Cinderella, who works as a servant in her own home, Rapunzel, who lives in a tower that is her home and her prison, Snow White, who runs away from home because the evil queen wants to kill her, Sleeping Beauty, in which, in the versions by Giambattista Basile and Italo Calvino, home is the place where the princess is raped by a king while she's sleeping, and Bluebeard, where young brides are murdered and hidden in their new home. And home is not a safe place also for the protagonist of the fairy tale that I choose to read with you on this occasion, that is, Fair, Brown and Trembling, the Irish Cinderella. This fairy tale was transcribed for the first time in 1890, in the years of the Celtic Revival, by the American folklorist Jeremiah Cottin. During his trips in the southwest of Ireland, he collected folk tales, translated them from Irish with the help of local interpreters, and published them in 3 collections, including Myths and Folklore of Ireland, which contains the story analyzed here. If you want to read it, the full text of the fairy tale, never translated into Italian until now, is available at the website indicated at the bottom of this slide. In the ATU Index, a catalogue of thousands of types of folk tales classified in 7 main categories, this fairy tale belongs to the 510A type, which indicates the tale of Cinderella and its numerous variants. It is a subcategory of the 510 type, the persecuted heroine. Before proceeding with the analysis of the fairy tale, I would like to briefly illustrate its plot for those who are not familiar with it. Besides, where possible, the main motifs words employed by folklorists to indicate standard elements found in folk tale will be indicated in square brackets with their letter number combination and description, and I refer here to the motif index of folk literature composed by C. Thompson. This is the story of 3 sisters, Fair, Brown and Trembling, daughters of the King of Tyrconnell, an ancient kingdom in Ireland. The son of the King of Armenia initially falls in love with the eldest sister, Fair. Trembling is the youngest and the most beautiful, so she is dressed with rags and is kept at home as a servant because her sisters are afraid that she will get married before them. She can't even go to church, but on a Sunday she succeeds thanks to the help of the henwife, who, with her cloak of darkness, creates clothes suitable for the occasion and gives her magical objects. However, she must respect one condition. She cannot go into the church and must run away as soon as the Mass ends. It happens that the son of the King of Armenia sees the mysterious woman that is Trembling outside the church and falls in love with her. The 3rd time Trembling goes to Mass, he runs after her and takes off her shoe while she is running away on her mare. Thus the search for the right foot begins, and only after the shoe test, followed by a fight between contenders, the prince and Trembling get married and have a son. But the story doesn't end here. Indeed, after an attempted sororicide by Fair, who tries to take her sister's place, Trembling is swallowed by a whale. Fortunately, after various vicissitudes, the prince managed to save her by shooting the magical animal. Once exposed, Fair is punished and abandoned at sea, and Trembling, like the well-known Cinderella, gets a happy ending. In the end, the couple has 14 children and dies of old age. As you can see in this beautiful illustration realized by David MacPhail for the retelling of Fair, Brown and Trembling, included in the collection A Pot of Gold, published in 2004 by Catherine Kroll, Trembling is forced to stay at home by her jealous sisters. It looks exactly like they are telling her, "Stay home, don't go out," while they are dressed up to go to church, a typical Irish church that we can see in the background. So, who keeps Trembling at home? The answer is her jealous older sisters. Trembling, who according to the scheme of the seven character types or dramatis personae identified by Vladimir Prop in Morphology of the Folk Tale, is the heroine and princess of the story. Unlike Disney's Cinderella, she is not an orphan, but has a father, albeit absent. And she is kept at home not by her cruel stepmother, because she doesn't have one, but by her sisters, Fair and Brown, the villains of the story, who are afraid that their younger sisters might get married first thanks to her beauty. Indeed, as we can read at the beginning of the story, Fair and Brown had new dresses and went to church every Sunday. Trembling was kept at home to do the cooking and the work. They would not let her go out of the house at all, for she was more beautiful than the other two, and they were in dread she might marry before themselves. Who helps Trembling leaving the house is the old wife, who has three roles in this story. She is the dispatcher because she pushes Trembling to leave the house to go to Mass. She is the donor. She is the donor because she gives her precious clothes, extraordinary means, and magical objects, and she is the helper because she assists her in her mission. Importantly, she is not a sweet fairy godmother, but a rural character who fits better in the Irish context. This character is related to the witch, the seer, and the herbalist. Let's read now the part of the story where the henwife helps Trembling to leave the house. One Sunday morning, after the other two, Fair and Brown, had gone to church, the old wife came into the kitchen to Trembling and said, "It's at church you ought to be this day, instead of working here at home." "How could I go?" said Trembling. "I have no clothes good enough to wear at church, and if my sisters were to see me, they'd kill me for going out of the house. And here is another proof that she can go out of the house because of her sisters." "I'll give you," said the henwife, "a finer dress than either of them has ever seen. And now, tell me, what dress will you have?" "I'll have," said Trembling, "a dress as white as snow and green shoes for my feet." And this way she gets ready for her adventure. But the one who saves Trembling in the end is the prince, the son of the king of Romania. He is the hero who finds and saves Trembling from her jealous sisters. He gets married with her after winning a fight with other princes, and he saves her once again from Fair weakness. The rescue begins when the prince visits the house of the king of Tyrconnell for the shoe test and finds out that in addition to Fair and Brown, there is a third girl hidden in a closet. "Is there any other young woman in the house?" asked the prince. "There is," said Trembling, speaking up in the closet. "I'm here." "Oh, we have her for nothing but to put out the ashes," said the sister. But the prince and the others wouldn't leave the house till they had seen her, so the two sisters had to open the door. When Trembling came out, the shoe was given to her, and it fitted exactly. What a beautiful scene, you say. However, not all that glitter is gold. Indeed, if it is true that the prince saves Trembling from the jealousy of her sisters, it is also true that, like other men of his time, he sees Trembling as an object to be conquered, as it can be seen from the following lines. As no others came to claim the woman, she belonged of right to the son of the king of Romania. And it is precisely the treatment of women as object, the core of the feminist adaptation of the story called Sister Fair. The author is Deirdre Sullivan, an Irish writer who, among other things, has work experiences with autistic children. She has won several awards with her stories for young adults, including Needlework, a novel that tells the story of a girl who is victim of domestic violence. Sister Fair is part of the collection Tangleweed and Brine, published by Little Island Books in Dublin in 2017. It is a collection made up of 13 dark retellings of classic fairy tales, which aims to reflect on the fate of young women in those stories and, consequently, on the women's condition in our times, where gender based discrimination and violence are becoming more and more an increasingly worrying issue. Just like Angela Carter's The Bloody Chamber and Emma Donoghue Kissing the Witch, it is an example of feminist postmodernist rewriting of fairy tales. This adaptation presents a different development of the story compared to that of the versions published by Jeremiah Cottin and Catherine Kroll. Fair, Brown, and Trembling are still three sisters, daughters of a king. Fair, the fair one, is full of responsibility. Brown is plump, dark-skinned, and has a difficult character. Trembling, the youngest and the most beautiful, behaves strangely, suggesting that she is suffering from autism. She is locked up in her own home for the usual reason, but not by her sisters, who worry about her after all. Here too, a man falls in love with Fair, but then when he sees Trembling, he changes his mind, and, in agreement with the king, he chooses her because she is more beautiful. Though it is not explicitly said, the man abuses and traumatizes her, making her close even more than herself. But one day, at the lake, he meets Fair, who, in order to protect her defenseless sister from a cruel future, seduces the man, gets physical with him, and then kills him. As you can see, the protagonist here is no longer Trembling, but Fair, the older sister. It is a second-person narrative where the pronoun you addressed to Fair is used almost 200 times. And the time used is the present one, both characteristics that allow the reader to fully identify with the protagonist. Importantly, while the aim of the 1819 description is a folkloristic one, the purpose here is to reflect on the fate of young women in fairy tales and society. As a matter of fact, emphasis is now on inner reality, and there also is a return to those sexual elements typical of many classic fairy tales, eliminated from them through time to make them more suitable for children, as Mariah Tartar observes in Sex and Violence, the hardcore of fairy tales, in reference to the collections of the Grimm brothers. So, who keeps Trembling at home in this adaptation? The answer is her father and the society in which she lives. Indeed, Trembling is kept at home because she is more beautiful than her sisters, and if she gets married before them, it means that there is something wrong with them. Besides, her father treats her and her sisters as well like an object, because she is a girl and, moreover, a strange one. Therefore, it is emphasized that she is not kept at home by her jealous sisters, but by the rules of the patriarchal society in which they live. And this is very clear from these lines. They keep her in the kitchen till you're married, or they should do. The way of it with girls. Simple counting, ordering, a sequence. The first one's first, the second one second. If the third one married first, they know she was the best. They wouldn't choose you. Thus, the three sisters, as women, are all victims of the society of their time, and there is only one fate for them. You marry someone, then you get a baby, and you're safe. You can't have safety, see, without a baby. That's the thing that makes this world this while. There are other things you can give too. Soft bread and a clean house. Gentle voice, big smile. Women are therefore seen as beauty and a womb. That's all they are. That's all a man needs. It becomes clearer the distinction here between men as subjects and women as objects. As for the king, he gives his daughters as brides to those who ask for them, not considering their opinions and their happiness. Regarding Trembling, for example, it is said that the king likes her voiceless and with quiet hands. As for the prince, paradoxically, he is the villain of this version of the story, because he chooses the women he wants and he treats them without any respect, by playing with both their sentiments and their bodies, as they were toys in his hands. Importantly, he doesn't have a name. The author refers to him by using the pronoun he, and describes him as another, a snake man, a danger for women. As we have read in the UNICEF Digest, the women of this fairy tale, just like many women who suffer domestic violence in the real world, are unable to make their own decisions, voice their own opinions, or protect themselves. And going back to the definition given at the beginning, we can say that it is an example of physical, psychological, and emotional abuse. In the end, if the prince is the villain of the tale, who saves Trembling? The answer is her sister Fair. And this is a significant reversal of roles. In this adaptation, Fair has always been worried about her little sister. She wants to keep her safe, she wants to protect her, although she is often a burden to her. As a matter of fact, she sacrifices her virgin body and drowns the cruel man who intends to ruin Trembling's future. This way she proves to be a strong and courageous woman who makes her choice in a world ruled by men. However, and sadly, this is not a happy ending, but only a temporary rescue. To conclude, going back to the question asked at the very beginning of this talk, that is home a safe place? After reading this fairy tale, which just like every fairy tale speaks powerfully of the times in which it has been told, to say it by using Teveson's words, the answer is not for everyone, especially for women, whether they are either princesses locked in their house by jealous sisters and mean fathers, or women forced to stay at home with dangerous relatives in the time of coronavirus. If you enjoyed my talk and there is something more you want to learn about, I have inserted the bibliography here and the setography here. Thanks for listening or reading, and please, wherever you are, stay safe. Thank you.